really privileged and honored to be here. Thank you for this wonderful setup. As Pari said, I think our team has pulled out an incredible event. My sincere thanks for them. I think Pari gave a very inspiring talk, and it is always difficult to follow that type of a keynote. But we live in an interesting time because we have a lot more machines doing work now because of AI. But we also have a profound understanding that the human capital and the importance of the human capital is not going to go away. In early 2010, there was a sort of an anxiety that AI would displace humans out of the equation. But that anxiety is more or less kind of gone away. And at Drop, I have the privilege of working, Vamsi and I have the privilege of working with global customers, at least 200 of them, across various talent decisions. And what we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years is the skill stack that they are hoping to get from India is dramatically changing. I think some of what Pari pointed out as marshots can be real true events in the next 5 years, because there is a certain amount of resilience that each function brings in. Say, for example, data science. You can't just be a heads-down modeler if you are working in India as a data scientist. You have to know a little bit on data ingestion on the data engineering side. You have to know a little bit on the ETL side, a little bit on the actual modeling, and also present the output to global audience. This has built an incredible resilience within our talent ecosystem. So our customers are absolutely delighted to include India in every single evaluation. But what makes India very special? What has kind of propelled us here? What is in store for us in the next 2 to 3 years or even beyond? One of the most fundamental, fascinating part for me when we started this research is there is a book called Sapiens, The History of Humankind. It was written by Dr. Yuval Noah Harari, a fantastic book. What he says is very fascinating. He says that humans are weak animals individually, and their killer app, the killer strength, comes from us working together. I think that's what India has done in the last 20 to 30 years, especially in the areas of education. Because education in India is a partnership between government initiatives, private initiatives, and as well as families. The biggest system that we will talk a little bit more about is the Indian families and their commitment to give children their education. This collection has really tripled our engineering output. We now produce 1.5 million engineers every year. The STEM grads, we have doubled that. Like we are producing almost 2.24 million STEM grads. This is a phenomenal achievement. There may be some questions and thoughts in folks in the audience about the rote learning effect, meaning we rely a bit more on memory, but the digital is already changing that. Our schools are bringing in smart boards. There is a lot more learning equipment coming into our schools. So we're quite excited about this type of an education infrastructure. The other important aspect, I want a little bit talk about the equality and inclusion. And here, the future is there, but it is not evenly distributed. We accept that. But we have phenomenal case studies of people coming up and becoming global leaders from socially underrepresented classes. And we have a lot of work to do, no denial there. But we have good evidence that education is viewed as a common success factor in enabling success for their offspring's children and so on. And keep in mind, we have done phenomenal work on literacy rate. Like in less than 30 years, we have bridged the gap between the male-female literacy rate. This is an achievement that India should be super proud of. And When you look at resilience, coming back to the theme of this event, there are multiple studies that shows that Indian labor workforce, because of what they have gone through to get the education that they need to get, are super resilient. And resilience is actually a very complex topic. You would have to look at it as a self-resilience, you have to look at it as a team leader resilience, workplace resilience, and so on. But I'm just going to a little bit focus on the self-resilience. So what does it truly mean? It just means the spirit that you have to bounce back. So when a catastrophic event or when a disorderly event happens, how do you process that internally and how do you bounce back with more positivity, right? Here is a quick example. During COVID, one of the teachers, she did not really have the equipment set up. Pari a little bit talked about figuring things out. Just took her iPhone, tied it to a hanger, used her geo, and really started telling the story to their kids from an education standpoint. This is an example of grit, determination, resilience, right? This is built into the labor force in a way that it is not seen in other parts of the world. And there are some comparisons like that in Latin America, which we will discuss in a little bit. But this is a fantastic example of what our labor force can do. At Drop, we conducted one very interesting study. We looked at people who have studied in rural or smaller cities, but now thriving in global cities, right? So we basically went after people who studied in tier 2, tier 3 micro cities, did their engineering in smaller colleges. Where are they working? So we have built a database of about 500,000 people working in global cities. This is a phenomenal achievement, and they are going into locations like Sao Paulo, Mexico City, all these unknown culture. There is really no explanation for this phenomenon, and we should invest more time in studying this. The only research that I found that came close to this phenomenon was a study that was done by Dunning and Kruger, who say that when you do not know what is in store for you, when the variables are unknown, sometimes you rely more on confidence, your own confidence, and you just plow through what comes after you. And today, even based on our limited sampling of data, the resilience and the strength that the rural engineer brings to the table is something phenomenal. We have not scratched the surface of this, and I think India has an unbelievable potential right here. And we have not forgotten the homegrown systems. Pari talked a little bit about how we can create and consume at the same point. Look at something like the Indian railway reservation system. I think over 1.5 million reservations a day. It caters to about 8 billion passengers on an annual rate. And it is a phenomenal technology that has been perfected over the last 10 years. And when you build systems of this complexity home with your resources, what happens is it sort of triggers and brings in the youth in the ecosystem into it. Actually, last 2 months back, a 17-year-old Chennai person found a privacy vulnerability in the Indian railway system, notified the officials, and they actually worked with them to resolve that. These type of stories you normally hear in the Western world, and we are now beginning to hear such stories in India, right? This is, and the opportunity that we have, whether it is in healthcare, whether that is in public policies, is just phenomenal to create and consume here. And I'm also super thrilled to see that the patent system is dramatically improving within India. In the last 5 years, India has awarded and close to about 1.5 million patents. And another interesting thing is also when we looked at global researchers citing Indian patents or Indian scientific articles, India has actually climbed up at least 6 ranks from 14 or 15 to almost like 8 in the last 5 years. And these are basically global researchers using India research and citing that in their scientific journals and articles. Now, while these are exciting trends in terms of what we have accomplished, what we can do, there is also something fundamentally bigger brewing for India, and I'm super pumped about that. And that is, many of you may know this concept, the foundation of what we call as the demographic dividend. That is expected to exceed till like 2050 and 2060. David Bloom from Harvard coined this term called demographic dividend. And what that means is India is disproportionately gifted with working population in the age group 15 to 64. And that, as a country, gives you a lot of opportunity, a lot of ability to invest back in the infrastructure in the next 2 to 3 decades. And a lot can come out of that. And it does give you a few challenges in terms of how do you skill the right level of population, how do you extract the maximum ROI out of that. But it is probably the only type incident that has been seen in centuries where this extended demographic dividend is going to work in our favor. The other interesting aspect that we are seeing is we look at reskilling paths across the globe. We have mapped about 4.5 million reskilling paths. The pace at which reskilling is happening within India, both from an upskilling and also completely reskilling into a new domain, has just been amazing. You have call center workers going into machine learning data annotation, call center workers going into inside sales representative type of work. You have data analysts becoming data scientists. Within the software stack, QA automation is moving into an SDE stack. Another important, interesting aspect that we see is the movement of the software developers between IT services and product development companies. And this has been a topic of debate in India for at least 10 years, where the portability of talent from services talent to product companies is either not accepted or not demonstrated. We studied about 200,000 profiles and tracked them the last 5 years. We have seen that this is beginning to happen. Out of the 200,000 people, we have about 9,000 people who have started their journey in IT services type of company and entered companies like Google, Meta, and a product ecosystem. This is a super energetic trend, and we hope that we can create an ecosystem for us, for the engineers to make these transitions. And I spoke a little bit about this at the opening. Another important thing that we are quite excited about is certain technologies where India is clearly showing dominant position. Let's say data science. Our data scientists are what I would call as the full stack data scientists, kind of like what Pari said, like you have to have full stack leadership, you have to have a full stack data science mindset. And because of that, globally, as more initiatives come into people analytics, more initiatives come into customer behavior models of sorts, more initiatives come into computer vision, the demand for data science talent is just going to exponentially increase. And we try to size it in terms of dollars, but really sky is the limit, or these are truly more shots that we can aim. And this ability to constantly push boundaries in the new areas that is just getting started up is an exciting aspect that India can be really planful about and executing the vision. How do we get there? I think it is, so we have opportunity, we have the talent, but we have to, the leaders in this room and also virtually, have to do a few things a little different, in our opinion, to help us get there. One is, I think for most of you, one of the foundational heroes could be Henry Ford, who created revolution in industrial manufacturing. I think we kind of have to take a supply chain driven approach when it comes to talent. It has become a little tactical of going to, just taking resumes, going through the keywords, putting it through the ATS, and then running it through the system, and then taking the talent. We probably have to decode it completely different. And one of the things that Henry Ford said was, I am not going to assume that inventory is going to walk into my factory for me to make product. I'm going to be there in the field, making sure the quality of the inventory is really good. And in that journey, Henry Ford visited coal fields, metal manufacturing plants, you name it, right? So we have to bring in that type of a view. Can we look at adjacent skills? Can we look at granular skills-based hiring? Can we look at differently able talent, and how do we bring them into the digital revolution? And one of the biggest things that we can also do is how do we integrate rural hubs into our hiring, right? And perhaps we don't need to go set up units in all the rural cities, but can we actually look at the catchment radius that we have based on, if you have a center in Chennai, what are the rural hubs you can actually tap? If you have a center in, say, Pune, what rural hubs can you tap? Certain companies are thinking about having ground-level recruitment force, even if they don't have a company presence there. And that can dramatically increase the quality of the talent that you will get, and also the pipeline of talent that you will create will slowly start evolving. And as I spoke a little bit about in the beginning, we have to accept that we have not done enough to bring the socially disadvantaged people into the digital revolution. I think all of us would have to do something very different here. And if you look at India, the government estimates are about 200 million people who are socially underprivileged, right? And our analysis kind of shows that perhaps 10% of the 20 million people are already ready with and hungry for the digital revolution. How do we figure out a model to work and bring in this talent and grow this talent? This is, if you think about the size of the talent that is available, these are incredible numbers. There are countries with this type of population that we are not putting full efforts on and making things happen for this population. So tons of work to be done here. And another, I know there is a keynote coming up on empathy, and I'm really looking forward to that. One of the things that even in our journey of building Zinnov or companies, we have not focused more on the professional skills and soft skills as a country, right? It is not in our DNA to focus on that, where the value actually is more given to the hard skill, what we call as the hard skills. But I think we have an opportunity here. Let me tell you a quick story about how important is empathy, and I'm sure you'll get more stories subsequently. The University of Chicago professor Kelly Hurd conducted one very interesting study. They created two clusters. One cluster to really design, the goal of the clusters was to design ideas of building good tasting potato chips for pregnant women. So they said, cluster one, just use logic, technical know-how, science, and come up with ideas. Cluster two, spend time with pregnant women, be empathetic about their problems, and come up with ideas. So obviously, cluster two is called as the empathetic group. Cluster one was called as the logic group, right? The empathetic group came up with ideas that is far-fetching and brilliant, right? And that is the power of empathy in product development. We really have to understand the customers really well, intimately understand their pain points, and then model your solutions towards that. And a lot of efforts are going in. We have collected a lot of institutes that specialize in this, and we have a lot more work to be done. One other thing, translating a little bit into what Pari said as Mars shots, one advantage we have because of how the data stack and the software stack is combining, the core set of skills India already has whether it is R, Python, JavaScript, Java, virtual machines, all these technologies. If you look at Bangalore alone, we have close to some 365,000 people who know Python here. Like, this is an unbelievable number. These course technologies, as the data infrastructure kind of consolidates under cloud, the skills that are relevant across various initiatives is pretty much the same. You have Python becoming relevant across multiple use cases. You have components like whether it is data engineering or data ingestion or visualization, we have a certain data skills and software skills that is becoming important. So if we can develop a skills-based balance sheet and start tackling these initiatives, and this initiative, we have mapped about 25 initiatives. It can range from people analytics to omni-channel merchandising to customer behavior models, and be it Salesforce intelligence. All these initiatives can create significant GDP impact on our net contribution. And we are looking at substantially high numbers. And here, whatever we set as goal, and even if we set a $1 trillion goal across these 25 initiatives, these are large initiatives that can take us there. And finally, I think a lot of this, we actually believe that we have to, as Pari also mentioned in his keynote, we have to subscribe to certain views of possibility and connect to local community leaders and really execute on our vision. I think even a drop, when you do that, your support comes from areas where you least expect. And one example for us is like we created an ML data annotation center in a rural town called Nemili. And we went through our challenges, but the community leader, who's actually Pari's mom, really helped us make sure that happens. And that type of community connect and support will really help you accelerate your journey. And this talent, I spoke a little bit about the partnerships between multiple entities, can happen only if you subscribe to the right views. And that view can actually get solidified by your results. And we want you to learn more data points about such positive views in the next 2 days. And I hope you have a fantastic time. And thank you for this great opportunity.